In this video, I'm going to be explaining string types. Strings are used to store text information such as names and words. There are multiple types of string available in Rust, and the two types that are most commonly used are the string type with the capital S. The string type is an owned data type. That'll be an important distinction in a moment. We then have the reference to str. This is a borrowed string slice. You can say this as a string slice. If you want to store a string data in a struct, you must use an owned string. You can't store a slice in a struct, at least not yet. When you want to give string data to a function, you want to use a string slice because it is more efficient to do so. Let's first take a look at an example of how to pass string data to a function. Here we have a function named printIt, and it accepts a string slice as some data, and it simply prints out the data using the println debug token. We call this printIt function using a string slice. If you'll notice, we have the double quotes and the words a string slice between the double quotes. By default, when you create a string in this way, it's automatically borrowed. That's why we're able to use the printIt function with the data type string slice, because when it's borrowed, it is a string slice. If we want to create an owned string, we can do so in multiple different ways. I have two listed here. First, we have the owned string as a string slice. We then call the .toOwned function on it, and that creates a owned string. Another way to do so is type in string and then call the from function that's implemented on the string data type, and then enter in your string slice, and it will create an owned string. To then use the owned string with this function, we have to borrow it, because as you can see, the string slice is borrowed data, as indicated by the ampersand. So when we borrow this owned string in both of these scenarios, it will call the function properly because it expects borrowed data. Here's an example of a struct, and we're attempting to store a string slice within the struct. As just mentioned, when you create a string in this manner, it's automatically borrowed. If we try to store borrowed data in a structure, it won't compile, and the reason is when this structure is to be dropped at the end of the scope, the structure is responsible for cleaning up its own memory. However, since we have borrowed memory here, the structure is not allowed to clean it up because it doesn't own this data. So it results in a compiler error, and it'll inform you that you cannot store a string slice in this manner. If we take a look at how to fix this, all we need to do is change the type from a string slice to a string with a capital S. To save the string data within the structure, we can use either the toOwned function on a string slice or the string from function on a string slice. That will create owned data, and then the owned data is transferred into the employee structure. So the employee then owns this name. And when this structure eventually gets dropped near the end of the program or wherever it happens to be dropped, it will be allowed to clear this memory, and therefore the compile will succeed. To recap, strings are automatically borrowed. Use toOwned or string from to create an owned copy of a string slice. Use an owned string when you're storing string data in a struct.